The Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This would be the time when we adopt the agenda for the day. Staff, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. We would like to move the recognition of outgoing Commissioner Albert Mueller to follow the approval of the minutes.
Okay. Does anyone object to that reordering of the agenda? Okay, then I have a motion to approve the agenda with that change. Commissioner Cordes, seconded by Commissioner Hens. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Okay. We have minutes from two meetings. One is our regular meeting from February 19th. Everyone's had a chance to review those. If there aren't any questions or changes, is there a motion to approve? Vice Chair Campbell, seconded by Commissioner Dubois. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Then there was the special meeting that was called on March 3rd. Those minutes were also included in your packet. Any additions or changes, or is there someone willing to move approval? Move approval by Commissioner Dubois, seconded by Vice Chair Campbell. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. This would be a time when we would like to recognize outgoing Commissioner Albert Mueller. Mr. Mueller, could you meet me at the podium here, please? Mr. Mueller, on behalf of the town of Hilton Head Island, I'd like to thank and commend you for your service to the community through the work of the Planning Commission for these last 2 years. You worked hard to understand the issues and asked insightful questions. When we were considering Planning Commission business, you also engaged in useful dialogue on key issues and brought a unique perspective to our decision-making process. We thank you for your dedicated service. Wish you much success in all your endeavors in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Appreciate that.
Good to see you. Okay, next we go to unfinished business. This is an item that's carried forward from our February 19th meeting. When it was deferred from that time, it was Commissioner Hens's recommendation that come back to us at this meeting, and we focus just on the changes, that we don't go through the entire presentation all over again. So unless I hear a commissioner who wants to hear the entire presentation, I'm going to just ask the staff to focus on the changes. It's a presentation we heard on February 19th. Is that all right? Fine. Okay, thank you, Missy.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. So before you today is an amendment to consider a change to our open space and pathways within major subdivisions, and forward a recommendation to Town Council. Staff is recommending approval of the amendment. And yes, this was discussed at a public hearing in February, and the front part of the memo here discusses what we considered and what is recommended for changes in the set that's before you today. There was a section 16.5.104B2 that is outlined here below. This section was proposed to be struck in the prior draft, and it was indicated that we should look into whether or not we should keep this selected text. The text states that the provisions of this section shall apply to any minor subdivision, 5 or fewer lots, creating lots for residential development that's expanded onto adjacent parcels, so the total number of lots in the subdivision is greater than 5. And that's pertaining to open space requirement applicability. And again, it was proposed to be struck in the previous draft. And the language states that the open space standards for all of open space requirements apply to major subdivisions within section B1. The subject language in B2 states that open space standards also apply to minor subdivisions that are expanded to over 5 lots beyond the current subdivision limits and adjacent to. The LMO already has a designation that an expansion in this nature is considered a major subdivision. So it is not necessary to retain the language under this particular paragraph. However, there is no harm in keeping the language, so we are recommending that it remain within the proposed amendment set. And so you'll see that this is no longer proposed to be struck in the draft that's before you. The next section that we discussed at the last meeting was pertaining to, right below that, section C3 within the same section that pertains to open space. This paragraph was added to ensure that common open space is identifiable through design elements or recreational amenities. The previous text said, or other means approved by the official, to be incorporated in the overall design to ensure that open space is visually identifiable. And rather than including an exhaustive list of possibilities, it did anticipate a reasonable level of discretion. But we reread that particular section and added what's underlined here, that including but not limited to, and then list some of those instances that would be required for how we designate open space. So the language then in total has been changed to say common open space must be visually identifiable, distinguished by elements including but not limited to signs, fencing, landscape buffers, trail systems, pools, sports facilities, or grass lawns. And the last area that we were looking at is related again to common open space, section D2. And it's this particular section. There was question as to the reasonable rules and regulations portion of this particular regulation. For instance, certain recreation areas like pools or ball fields may have specified hours or days open for its use. There could be age restrictions on certain types of playground equipment, et cetera. We believe that this section should be retained to ensure that these types of common open spaces remain qualified to satisfy the requirements, meeting the requirements in this common open space for major subdivisions. So we reviewed the question that was raised, should we either revise or remove the subject to reasonable rules and regulations, and we believe that this text should remain unchanged. So that is the overview of the changes that we were, that you all required us to go back and take a look at, and they are included within the text amendment draft as referenced in this particular section of the staff report. Are there any questions?
Don't forget to activate your mics if you have a question, but any questions of Missy while she's here? Did staff address the concerns that came up last month adequately that we're prepared to move on?
I move to approve.
That would move to recommend to town council approval, okay? Second by Commissioner Whaley. Commission discussion or questions? All in favor? It's unanimous. It's not a public hearing. We could open it to public comment, but we had the public hearing on this already. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If there's anybody wanting to offer public comment, we could take it at this time. Yes, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, Ms. Whaley, gentlemen. Chester Williams, you'll recall that I did have some comments made at the last time this came before you. And I'm puzzled as to, well, let me get the button going here. Subject to reasonable rules and regulations. Right there. Whose rules and regulations? Is it the town's rules and regulations? It can't be, because all those rules and regulations need to be in the code. So what rules and regulations are there that you're referring to? I mean, I've suggested that you include a phrase, promulgated by any applicable owners association, because typically that's where those rules and regulations come from. And it's not like people don't know those rules and regulations, because those sorts of rules and regulations promulgated by an owners association have to be recorded over in the Beaver County Courthouse in the public land records. And often those regulations will say, if you're delinquent on the payment of your assessments, then you can't use the recreational areas. You know, someone could point to this and say, hey, well, the code says I can use them because they're common open space and everybody is. So it doesn't hurt at all to be specific about what you're getting at. And if that is what you're getting at, then it ought to say that. If that's not what you're getting at, then tell us what it is that you're getting at. On a couple of pages back further, page 16 of 25 down at the bottom. Miss, did y'all change the may to shall in there?
It's okay.
Say again, please.
It still says may.
Okay. That last, the incorporation of sidewalks shall meet all other requirements. The official may determine that a sidewalk is preferable over a pathway if, so that's a discretionary, anytime you say may, it means the official can do it, but doesn't have to do it. You know, a year and a half or so ago, the town went through this huge process of trying to take out all the discretionary authorities that the staff had. But here it is, you're putting it back in there. If there's a set of criteria that justify the use of sidewalks as opposed to pathways, then the LMO official ought to be required to approve that there. So that may in that sentence ought to read shall. And then on the following page, it said, the language is just kind of silly. It would connect seamlessly. What's the it in 2, 3, and 5? It would be very easy to say the sidewalk shall, because that's what you're dealing with here. And that's what I would suggest you do.
Thank you.
Those are the main issues I have.
Thank you.
I mean, the point is, if you're gonna, it's better to do it right than to do it fast. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I note that the word reasonable appears in the LMO many times, and I believe it's there to give flexibility in certain situations. So I believe we will.
This is may, as opposed to shall. It doesn't refer to reasonable there.
Thank you. We've already voted, so let's move on to the next item. Missy, this would be, under new business, consideration of STDV 001544-2024, public hearing for the application from Leander Canick, owner of 11 Yucca Drive, to name a street off Yucca Drive. And so I would like to open the public hearing on that particular item and ask Johaida Pfister to give the staff report. Hi, Johaida.
Hello, Johaida Pfister, Deputy Fire Chief. I am presenting on Yucca Lane, which we are proposing to name a new access that's located off of Yucca Drive. Yucca Lane will provide direct access to 5 homes on that piece of the parcel. And just for reference, the existing Yucca Drive is located off of Fish Hall Road. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the application based upon the review criteria that's outlined in the LMO and was enclosed in your staff report. This is the area, so this is Fish Hall, and then this is the area that is being developed. The proposed street name Yucca Lane was chosen to maintain consistency throughout the neighborhood. The other names that were proposed were not similar and were not associated with the current street name that's in there that is recommended in criteria D. So this is Yucca Drive, and then it has been brought around to create the horseshoe, and then Yucca Drive already exists. But Yucca Lane was comes off of that, and so that is the piece we are proposing to name so that we can give addresses. And as you can see, we've laid out the addressing for both Yucca Drive and Yucca Lane, and we do it so that the numbering is different. So Yucca Lane will get the 300s and Drive will get the 100s and 200s, so that it is differentiated even though they share the same part of the name. And as described in the staff report, the street names have been vetted and they meet the criteria that was set out in the LMO. So if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Any questions? You've all seen the written material and heard Johida's presentation. Any questions of Johida at this time? Commissioner Hens?
I think I've said this before, and so I hesitate to say it again. It's kind of boring, but there's so many names, possible names. It's so confusing because I don't think most people know a name by whether it's a road or a street or a court. They just know it by the name of the road. And I think if you're going to have a different road, you just ought to have a different name, just to make it clear to the using public that what street you're going on versus parsing it down into the second name, the lane, the road, the drive. And but you know, if the fire department doesn't have that issue, then I guess I wouldn't have that issue either.
And generally, yes, I try to look at that. Finding something that is amenable to the applicant and then also meets the criteria of staying consistent in naming it so that in a neighborhood they go together. So trying to find something else that would go with Yucca. There was nothing in their proposal for that. And so in order to make it so that it is distinguishable, that is why we have gone to making sure that the addresses are not duplicated on both of the streets. So, you know, when we're looking at it from a mapping and responding standpoint, we know that the 300s are at the very back and the other numbers. We did have situations previously where they did use the same name with different endings, but they use the same numbering. So that is confusing, and we've tried to rectify that when somebody wants to keep a name the same.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions of commission, this would be a time that anyone from the public who would like to speak to us on this topic, now would be the time to come forward. Do I see anybody who wants to talk with us about this? I do not, so I'll close the public hearing and open it back up to commission discussion. It comes with a recommendation to approve. Our action would be to approve the naming of this street, not to recommend it to someone. So this would be, we have a motion.
So move.
Move to approve by Commissioner Hens, supported by Vice Chair Campbell. Any discussion? All in favor of approval? It's unanimous. Thank you, Johida.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item would be public hearing for the consideration of an ordinance to amend Title 16 of the Municipal Code, the Land Management Ordinance, to the residential-based zoning district standards for R12 moderate to high-density residential district and the workforce housing program, to include the Elmo sections that you see listed on your agenda. This would be time, I think, where Ben Brown is going to give us a presentation on that. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Ben Brown. I'm the town's Director of Strategic Initiatives, and I've been very involved with the North Point Initiative since 2022, for almost 3 years now. And I will, before Missy provides the staff reports, I'll provide some background information on key events that led us to today and led us to these two applications. I'll also talk about the development agreement, the goals of the development agreement, and some of the key roles of both of our development partner, as well as the town of Hilton Head. I like this slide here just because it shows the property. We're right here on Jarvis Creek, but this is the North Point property, right on Jarvis Creek. It's a beautiful site. I know we've been talking about this for almost 3 years now, so we all know where the property is. But here's the North Point property, which is just west of the U.S. Post Office, right next to Jarvis Creek. Marsh Point Apartments are to our north. The coastal Discovery Museum is to our south, and we are less than a mile from the school campus. And this property was originally acquired by the town in the late 1990s. And this property was acquired from SCDOT. SCDOT acquired the property to help facilitate the construction of the Cross Island Parkway. And this was also listed in the Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan as identified for future development. But when the town acquired it, the existing zoning at the time was OL, office, I think it was office light commercial. And then other events that have led us to today is back in 2019, the town adopted the Workforce Housing Strategic Plan, which outlined several strategies that the town should implement in collaboration with the private sector. If we remember back, this was when we were talking about things like commercial conversions, density bonuses, as well as public-private partnerships. And then in 2020 and 2021, that's when the town adopted policy incentives to encourage the construction of workforce housing. And in 2022, in February of 2022, the town council held a workshop to discuss workforce housing. The town manager and assistant town manager both facilitated this workshop in close collaboration with the council, and they talked about these various incentives, the bonus densities, the commercial conversion. And some of the questions were asked is, we have these great incentives, why aren't we bringing new workforce housing units to market? And it was also discussed that the Workforce Housing Strategic Plan talked about public-private partnerships. But up until this point, the town hadn't advanced a public-private partnership. So all of the town's land holdings were evaluated. And the North Point property, because it had already been developed as a commercial subdivision back in the late 80s, was a site that could be redeveloped for workforce housing. And in April 1st of 2022, that was following this meeting, but that's when the town prepared a request for qualifications to support the proposed North Point location. That was the town's help wanted sign to look for potential development partners that had considerable experience in finance, planning, housing, et cetera, that could help make this development a reality. What the town found is that there were 10 firms that were interested in working with the town. And of those 10, the North Point Public-Private Partnership Housing Advisory Committee reviewed those 10 proposals and advanced 7 of them and asked those 7 firms to provide full development proposals. And what was found is that all 7 proposals brought different qualities, but there was one company in particular, One Street Residential, that was selected as a finalist because of their land planning, their ability to finance the project, their target of the island's essential workforce. Plus, they have a history of 35 years of successful projects in mixed income and affordable development. But that's how we began really working closely with One Street Residential. We have Brendan Barr here today, who's a senior manager with the company, and he and his team have worked closely with the town over the last few months and years. The North Point Committee, I have to give a special thank you to the North Point Workforce Housing Committee. They have worked very closely with me, with the town manager, and with staff, and have helped give us direction on getting to this point. And what we did is we invited One Street to the island, and we visited various locations on Hilton Head. We went to the Boys and Girls Club, we went to Island Rec, we looked at the Palmetto Village development that was developed by Sea Pines, and it helped us really get a better understanding of each other. But most importantly, it helped the One Street team better understand whom they would be developing for, whom they would be serving on this island by meeting with the Island Rec, meeting with the Boys and Girls Club, and getting to know other folks on the island. That was really helpful. As we solidified the partnership, the North Point Committee and I traveled to the Atlanta area, and we visited communities that were both developed and managed by the One Street team. This helped us better understand their construction. This helped us better understand their property management, as well as their company culture. Then, In September of 2023, the mayor and town manager announced One Street Residential as the town's preferred development partner. What this meant is that the RFP had been awarded to One Street. At this point, we really began negotiating and structuring the development agreement. Ultimately, on June 18th of 2024, Town Council authorized the town manager to execute the North Point Workforce Housing Development Agreement. And that's why we're here today. Part of what that development agreement illustrates is the responsibilities of the town as well as the responsibilities of the development partner. One of the town's responsibilities is to submit an application to support the use, the density, and the development standards to advance the development agreement. That's why we're here today, submitting an application for a zoning map amendment as well as associated text amendments. In September of last year, in 2024, we began discussing this at a workshop with town council. And we, the staff, have spent a lot of time studying the island and figuring out what is the appropriate land use for this property. We know that it was originally a law office and light commercial zoning district, but then when the town bought it, in 2014, the town rezoned the property as well as several properties on the island to the Parks and Recreational Zoning District. And the Parks and Recreational Zoning District has certain requirements on it. So we had to look at a zoning use that supported North Point as well as development standards that supported North Point. And we looked at various zoning districts. RM12 was ultimately selected as the most appropriate district. The height supports the 45 feet maximum height. There are other zoning districts on the island like WMU, waterfront mixed use, but has a much higher height and a higher density. But when we look at the development agreement, and I'll show you in just a minute, but what we've done is we've calibrated this site, we've studied this site to see what would fit on the property. Through some preliminary due diligence, we were comfortable that the site could accommodate neighborhood scale at about 150 to 170 multifamily apartments. But it wasn't until the development agreement was executed that we could really dive into site design to see what the site could yield, what was the capacity of the site while maintaining neighborhood character. Neighborhood character is really functional open space. Neighborhood character is a combination of heights. It's not all three-story buildings. It's threes, twos, down to ones. And it's paying close attention to the way the site is laid out, the way the site functions, as well as the long-term sustainability of the property. We've discussed the scope of this project at length over the last couple of years, but it's 11 acres of town-owned land. It's exactly 11.337 acres. It's located close to the schools. It's located relatively close to the hospital, to 2 fire stations, to several jobs on the island. This will be an energy efficient, sustainable neighborhood with high quality architecture, high quality construction. The site will yield approximately 160 rental units consisting of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. I can tell you today, we have studied this site and it will yield, we believe, 157 units. And that's 157 units, one of which will be an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment for a full-time on-site property manager. So, and these will have amenities and programming that prioritize the well-being and quality of life of our residents. We'll have the on-site property management. We'll have a community building with high-speed internet, pool and outdoor communal spaces with grilling, pavilions, seating, and playground, walking trails, indoor and outdoor fitness stations, a community garden, laundry appliances within each individual unit. But I mention this because these are Class A market rate amenities. These are not the type of amenities you would generally envision in, say, something that was a traditional, just affordable housing. And we're able to do this in partnership with One Street Residential, and by the town contributing land through a long-term ground lease, by the town contributing the $1 million ARPA grant. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in just a minute. Workforce affordability. We heard loud and clear from the community that North Point should serve the folks who work or will work on Hilton Head Island. This is serving Hilton Head Island's workforce. So these are teachers, first responders, healthcare providers, hospitality workers, and a whole lot more. But what we've identified through considerable due diligence is that the island's essential workforce falls between approximately 60 and 150% of the Beaufort County area median income. And whenever I hear the AMI, I like to see charts that help me better understand that and better calibrate that to Hilton Head. But we think in terms of people, and I'll show you a slide in just a minute that helps illustrate the wide mixed income ranges that we can target between 60 and 150%. And with at least 50% of the households earning between 60 and 80% of the AMI. So this is true mixed income. There will also be affordability covenants on the property. We have entered into a development agreement, we the town, with a 65-year ground lease. But it was important to the North Point Housing Advisory Committee that this property stay a workforce neighborhood in perpetuity. So we'll also record covenants on the property. So at the end of that 65 years, it doesn't just become market rate. This will be a workforce housing community forever. This is the AMI chart, but I like to share this because when we look at 60% up to 150%, and we think in terms of a family of three, but this is true mixed income. This is $57,000 a year, up to almost $144,000 a year. And I just think of myself when my wife and we started our careers on Hilton Head about 25 years ago. We had a combined income of about $50,000. I know at the time we paid about $1,000 a month in rent. We thought that was a heck of a lot of money at the time, but we were able to pay our bills. And this chart helps us understand who could qualify to live at North Point. This is based on the 2024 AMI, which will be updated in May. That's typically when we receive our new numbers. But if you look at this and you just start thinking of different income ranges, and I start thinking of a caregiver and a firefighter, where does that fall on the range? A teacher and a first responder, where does that fall on the range? What if you have one child, two children, but there are several scenarios that can be accommodated by targeting 60 up to 150% of the area median income. And it's really important to note that at least 50% of the units will fall in this 60 to 80%. So what is our development partner's role? Well, their role is the financing. Their role is design and permitting. Their role is project management, construction, lease up, long-term programming, and property management. What is the town's role? The town's role is the project vision. This came from town council. The town is also contributing 11 acres of land through a 65-year ground lease. The town is also contributing $1 million grant that the town received from the federal government. This was COVID stimulus money. The town is also responsible for zoning entitlements. That's why we're here today, as well as the long-term monitoring and programming support for North Point. We know that the people will make North Point successful, so the town has to be involved in the long-term monitoring and program support. Timeline, we're here today with the Planning Commission. We're gonna talk about the zoning, the RM12. What we found in our development agreement, which was approved in June of last year, is the development agreement says that we are going to accommodate 150 to 170 multifamily apartments with a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Now, the development agreement also says that we are going to study the site and calibrate what fits on that property while maintaining neighborhood scale. And I mention that because we've prepared site plans that could yield 170 units. But that site plan does not protect the neighborhood scale, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, that we're really proud of. But we have prepared a plan that can yield 157 units with that combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, with great amenities that prioritize the well-being and quality of life of the residents. And the 25% bonus for workforce housing came from the development agreement. If you take that 11.337 acre site and you multiply that by 15, that's your 170 units. That's where we landed on that. But we know that this site is going to yield just under 14 units per acre. It's going to yield just under 160 units. We also calibrated the site by studying it to see how much of the site will be pervious, how much of the site will be impervious. We know that industry standards for moderate density, which is up in that 12 to 16 units per acre, we know that industry standards for best-in-class development lands about 50%. That's 50% of your site is pervious, 50% of your site is impervious. Well, we're Hilton Head Island. We want to do things even better than best-in-class. So we've challenged ourselves. We can get this site down to 55% pervious, and I'm going to show you how in just a minute. With this bonus density, this is only applicable to properties in the RM12 district that are located on a major arterial, such as William Hilton Parkway, Palmetto Bay, that has a minimum lot size of 5 acres. And Missy will talk more about that during her staff report. This will go to the Community Services and Public Safety Committee in April. It'll go to the Town Council in May, and the final reading in Town Council is scheduled for June 17th. And our goal has been to get through the entitlement, the due diligence, and then all the pre-construction work in this 2025. So in the summer of 2025, we hope to get through all the pre-construction. So we are in a position where we could break ground as soon as the fourth quarter of this year. So what does that mean? This is about an 18-month build. One Street's been doing this for over 35 years. They anticipate releasing the first units in about month 13, month 14. But if we break ground this year, we're looking at folks moving into units as soon as the first quarter of 2027. This is the site, and I like to share this because, as many of you know, I started my career with the town, but then went into the private sector and came back about 3 years ago. But I started to get involved with this project at the end of June in 2022. In July, myself as well as other folks on our team, we began walking the site, studying the site. We identified all the specimen trees, all the significant trees. We also identified all the existing infrastructure on the property. And we started defining our developable envelope. And what we found is that several of the trees on the site, although they didn't rise to the level of maybe significant or specimen, were absolutely beautiful trees. So we identified those as having to be preserved. We also looked at Jarvis Creek and this parcel 121 right on Jarvis Creek. We want to preserve this site in perpetuity as an open space amenity to the North Point community. And we were also able to land plan several areas of functional open space in the property. We have a 50-foot setback and buffer off the property line. I know the LMO allows some levels of flexibility. This development plan does not. We are going to have approximately 100 feet, if not more, and I'll show you in just a minute, a separation from the edge of pavement along William Hill Parkway before you get into the site. And I think I've lived on Marshland Road for 24 years, and I drive by what was the Greystone Lock Apartments or the Summer House condos now. And those are 3 stories in height. Those are set back, but that has that scale. This also will be well set back, maximum height of 3 stories, but it will blend with nature. And I'll show you this site plan in just a moment. Here is our open space plan. As we continued to study the site, we wanted to have as much functional open space on the site as well. We also want to incorporate as many best management practices on the site as possible. That's included in our development agreement. So we have several bioretention swales, we have bioretention filtration areas, but these are areas that will collect and infiltrate stormwater, and they're strategically located around the site. They're also built into the site development plan. So this is not a pond at the corner of the property. These are functional open space with native vegetation. And we see the area along Jarvis Creek is all open space. And one thing I point out is we were able to achieve 56% open space on the property. That's best practices. That's really an accomplishment. But then I was asked questions is, how can we reach 56% open space, but be at 50% impervious? And that's because some of our amenities, like the swimming pool, are impervious. So we challenged ourselves, because we know we wanted to get down to 45%. Why did we challenge ourselves to get down to 45%? Because the existing zoning is parks and recreation. The existing zoning is 45% maximum impervious. That's 55% pervious. So we looked at all the drive aisles. We looked at all of the parking. We know that a drive aisle can be as narrow as 20 feet. So we talked with Johaida and her team to make sure that we could accommodate the minimums. They said we could. We know with parking lots, it's 60 feet. We have 18 feet, 24 feet, 18 feet. So our parking lots were reduced to the minimum. So we're reducing blacktop, we're reducing urban heat. It's best in class development. We also looked at our pathways. Well, we know an asphalt multimodal pathway can be pervious. We're not necessarily going to recommend pervious asphalt for our drive aisles, but we know we can do it for our pathways. Well, this got us down to the 50%. As we continued to challenge ourselves, we were able to get down to a 45%. One other thing that we were looking at is the connectivity. This is a great site, it's a great location, but as we all know, it's right in, right out. Having spent a lot of time personally walking this property and walking over to the school campus, which is close, the issue is we have a post office right here. So we've been working with the post office for the last 2 years, and we are in the process of acquiring about 1.8 acres of land from the United States Postal Service so that we can provide an access road and safe pathway and connectivity to the school campus. And one thing I've learned about the post office, and we all know the post office has been there since the 1980s, it's been there a long time, but every time it rains, that property holds water. And some of the questions that was asked of me, does it hold water because there's too much blacktop on the site? Well, from researching the site, the reason it's holding water is because it was developed with no drainage infrastructure in the front of the property. None, zero. So when it rains hard, the water sits on the site and over time will eventually infiltrate. But because it wasn't really graded for bioretention swales, bioretention ponds like we're doing on the North Point track, it holds water. So what part of our acquisition is that we, the town, are going to install drainage infrastructure on this property. We're also going to incorporate flumes and retention swales to collect and treat stormwater. So part of this development plan is not only incorporating the North Point site, but it's also improving our neighbor just to the east. Now, this is my favorite slide, and I know this is probably meaningful to Brendan and his team as well, because this is the first time that we are publicly sharing our site plan for North Point. We have months and months into this. We are super proud of it. But I mentioned neighborhood scale. This is a combination of 1, 2, and 3-story buildings. Just to the north, we have the apartments, the Marsh Point apartments. From studying the neighborhood, we know that the apartments are about 35 feet in height. That's 2 stories. So we are proposing that all of the buildings along the northern property line are also 2-story. And I am really excited. Within the next 90 days, we're going to bring this back to the Planning Commission as part of our site development plan review. But this is great architecture. This is an apartment community that's going to make all of us proud. We also have 3-story buildings. We have lots of functional open space, community gardens, walking trails. We're envisioning a dog park, yoga garden. And when we squeezed the blacktop as much as we could, best practices, and we landed at 50% pervious, we were able to get down to 45% by incorporating lots of pervious materials into the site development plan. We're envisioning all of this pervious, 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 but again, it gives the site lots of areas to absorb and infiltrate water. And Missy will go through how this advances several of the needs, goals, strategies of the comprehensive plan. Missy will conclude with a recommendation asking the Planning Commission to advance the rezoning and the associated text amendments to Town Council with a recommendation for approval. But I just wanted to give some really good background information on how we got to this point today. I'm available to answer any questions now. I'll also be available through both public hearings if any questions come up, so.
Any questions
Thank
of
you.
Mr. Brown at this point? Commissioner Hens?
Yeah, that's exciting. And thank you for a really good overview. Who was the North Point Committee? Were they staff and community members, or?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. It's 3 council members, as well as, we have 3 members of the community. Today in the audience, we have Mr. Tom Lennox, who's part of the committee. The mayor's been actively involved in the committee. Mr. Kumar Viswanathan is part of the committee. Scott Weirman is part of the committee. But it's the 3 council members and the 3 community volunteers. The town manager and I have been extremely involved in every aspect of the committee. And I had the opportunity to travel to the Atlanta metro area with the North Point Advisory Committee and look at properties that were developed and managed by One Street.
Great work. One slide you didn't show is a rendering of what it might look like from the ground level. Is that available yet?
It's awesome, and I really wanted to show it today. I don't want to get ahead of the design review board, but I am looking forward to sharing that with you within the next 90 days when we come back for the DPR review.
Commissioner Whaley?
Mr. Brown, this was a wonderful presentation. It really helped me contextualize, visualize where you're going. Just, if you can go back to the slide that has sort of the parcels laid out, your very last slide, your visualization slide.
Yes.
I just want to ask a question.
There we go.
Yeah, so we know one of the parcels was before SC DOT, ceded it to the town, was open space. So this was a trust, the Hack Trust by the Jarvis Creek. So when you say this is open space, this is will be open space not to the community, just to the North Point residents?
What I've reached out to our neighborhood partners, and one thing I've mentioned to our neighbors to the north at Marsh Point is I believe there's a great opportunity to create connection from this site up into Marsh Point.
Okay.
Now, we need their
Approval.
to do that. But that's something that the committee's talked a lot about. We also have connection from the multi-purpose trail.
Okay.
But we're envisioning this as an amenity, not just to the North Point, but also to the community. Now, working very closely with One Street, there are certain requirements that the pool, for example, would not be available to anybody other than the residents.
I'm just kind of curious about the Jarvis Creek frontage and things like that. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other commission questions of Mr. Brown? Okay, we'll continue with Missy's presentation, then we will be open to public comment on this topic. So thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ben, for that presentation. It definitely gives a really great overview of this exciting project. And I will cover the 2 policy-related items. They are both public hearings. The first one is the text amendment, and the second one is the zoning map amendment. My presentations will not be as exciting as Ben's, so bear with me. But ultimately, as Ben explained, they are the enabling policy pieces that will make that project a reality. So 2 important potential action items before you. They are both public hearings, so I want to make sure that before we go into public comment that the public hearings are opened. So again, the first item is that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing to review and consider a text amendment application that would amend the residential-based zoning district standards for the RM12 moderate to high residential district and the workforce housing program, and forward a recommendation to Town Council. Town staff is recommending approval of the proposed text amendment. As Ben summarized, this particular project is part of our Town Council adopted strategic action plan. This text amendment falls within strategy number 1, establish a growth management strategy. And I'll just read the beginning part: to successfully manage increasing and evolving future growth patterns in a manner that will ensure sustainability of the Hilton Head Island's unique character. As you are well aware, we are advancing this LMO amendment project through 2 particular separate projects. One is the priority amendments plan and the full code overhaul. This is one of the priority amendments that we are advancing to address an emergent and important issue that cannot wait for the full code overhaul. As Ben indicated, there was a workshop that was held in September where we reviewed a number of the priority amendments, of which this amendment, text amendment, was contemplated to the RM12 district. And it was discussed with council at the time that we would allow workforce housing in the RM12 district, allow up to 25% density bonus for up to 15 dwelling units per acre, allow an impervious coverage increase with the understanding that we would continue to study it. It was discussed at 50% at the time of the workshop, require frontage on a major arterial, and require a minimum lot size of 5 acres. We introduced this amendment to the Planning Commission in January. At that time, the Planning Commission asked for several items of clarification. One was to clarify whether short-term rentals are allowed within the workforce housing program, analyze impervious coverage increase from 35% to 45%, and then to provide a map of the RM12 properties that meet the criteria that are identified in this density bonus text amendment. Items 2 and 3 are handled in the analysis section of the memo, so I will cover those separately. And to address the clarification provided in item 1, the workforce housing program was adopted prior to the town short-term rental ordinance. So while it doesn't specifically reference short-term rentals, within that existing policy in the occupancy and eligibility requirements, it states that rental unit households shall occupy the workforce housing unit as their sole residence, which means that it could not be used as a short-term rental. So I just wanted to make sure that that was addressed. And then again, items 2 and 3 will be covered later in the staff report. So Ben already explained to you some of these items that summarize part of why we're here today, the development agreement for North Point, and that this particular text amendment and the additional zoning map amendment are the 2 pieces of policy that would create and enable this neighborhood in the North Point area. Ben explained the location, the 11 acres that are being contemplated as well, and its location related to the school complex, the Cross Island Parkway, Boys and Girls Club. So as part of this, again, effort is to both rezone the property to RM12, which is the next agenda item, and then this item is to contemplate the text amendment to the RM12 district and the workforce housing program. Again, these 2 actions are complementary and in tandem policy actions that are meant to implement this particular project. And now I'll just go through the analysis of the proposed amendment. All of the text amendments are organized in a table so that they can be followed easily. And it identifies those issues that were raised in the council workshop back in September with how this amendment addresses those issues. So 1, to allow workforce housing in the RM12 district. It is proposed in the text amendment to be allowed or permitted with conditions. That means that there are some use-specific conditions for the workforce housing use. The other issue is to identify a minimum lot size of 5 acres and frontage on a major arterial. The text amendment states that the workforce housing use in RM12 shall comply with the following conditions. The property shall be a minimum of 5 acres. The property shall be located on a major arterial in accordance with our street hierarchy section. William Hilton Parkway is one of the 4 major arterials that are identified within that street hierarchy table. And to allow 25% density bonus up to 15 dwelling units per acre, and to allow impervious coverage increase. The language in the text amendment states that if at least 50% of all units within the development are workforce housing units, the following is permitted: a density bonus of up to 25% above the base residential density standards, up to 15 dwelling units per acre, and that there is a maximum impervious coverage of 45%. Additionally, there's also some questions and review standards that we'll cover later in the staff report, but there was some comparative research that was requested when we met with the Planning Commission in January. So we looked at various communities, their maximum impervious coverage allowances for multifamily, and some other development requirements such as heights and densities. So we looked at the city of Charleston, Charleston County, Beaufort County, town of Bluffton, Kiowa Island, Georgetown County, and Surfside Beach, and found that for multifamily, they have a range of impervious coverage requirements between 50 and 80%. They also have various height ranges that were identified between 35 and 55 feet in height for those multifamily developments, and then various density ranges as well. So from variable densities or a 4-story limit to densities of 12, 16, or even up to 26 units per acre. So that's a comparative to what this amendment proposes. And then we also looked at the comparison of impervious coverage within the town's zoning districts, and that's what this table covers. You can see that the impervious coverage requirements range from not applicable and 35% up to 65% and unlimited in the Coligny Resort District. But I wanted to note that our Coligny Resort District, our mixed-use district, resort development district, Sea Pine Circle District, Stony District, and our WMU districts all allow 10 or more dwelling units per acre. It's unlimited in the Coligny Resort District, and they all allow a higher impervious coverage of between 50 and 60% impervious coverage. So even when you look at the impervious coverage requirements and where we have higher densities, it falls within the range within our existing code. We also looked to some other comparative standards and wanted to make sure that the development pattern and standards that are proposed balance flexibility of the density and development standards with design and development priorities, such as maintaining open space, ensuring neighborhood scale, preserving trees, and mitigating the impact of impervious lot coverage. So while still allowing and promoting the development and keeping with neighborhood character, other coastal communities that we looked at allow multifamily development, again, between 12 and 16 units. And some of those cases showed lot coverage between 50 and 80%. We also looked at the South Carolina Sea Grant Consortium, and they note the limitation of impervious cover as a strategy for low impact development. In their literature, they reference some examples from island communities such as Pawleys Island and Sullivan's Island, and they mention those communities as incorporating these best practices of between 40 and 50% impervious. And the proposed maximum lot coverage for workforce housing as part of this amendment falls within that range. This map shows the eligible properties that are zoned or are planned to be zoned RM12 that meet the requirements of a 5-acre minimum and location on a major arterial. So those 3 potential properties that could be eligible for this RM12 and workforce housing density program are outlined on this particular map. And then furthermore, we identified some comparisons of the existing density and build out of those other 2 properties Palmetto Bay Villas, and the Oaks. So Palmetto Bay Villas, you can see in this chart, is a 5.5 acre site. It's currently developed at 11 dwelling units per acre, and could be up to 60 with the existing program, or it's entitled up to 66 units. And then with this particular density bonus, could be up to 82. We approximated the impervious coverage at around 45% with an approximate building height of 35 and the number of parking spaces. And you can see we've done the same for the Oaks Villas, just to give an idea of those existing sites that could qualify for this potential density bonus program. This amendment applies to new development and will not create any new nonconformities. And as with all text amendments, these are the text amendment review standards, items A through F, and the following area covers how this amendment meets those required review criteria. Item 1, it supports economic growth and housing goals as part of the comprehensive plan. It responds to changing conditions by calibrating development requirements with strategic objectives. It addresses a demonstrated housing need. It upholds the intent of zoning regulations by allowing reasonable but limited increases in density and impervious surface when achieving town goals. Ensures higher density workforce housing developments in ARM 12 are located in appropriate locations along major roads on properties large enough to accommodate residential growth. And it considers best practices in coastal communities and the impact of residential density increases. So again, it is staff's recommendation that we recommend approval of this proposed text amendment, and myself or Ben Brown can take questions at this time.
Before we open up to public comment, do we have commission questions of either Mr. Brown or Ms. Lewick? Commissioner Whaley.
This is probably more an education thing. When you talk about major arterials, does that change much over time?
The major arterials are identified within our code, and they include William Hilton Parkway, Pope Avenue, Palmetto Bay, and the Cross Island Parkway. And so if we were to amend our code and designate a different arterial, there's a definition and criteria for that, but it is something that is codified in our ordinance. There's a major arterial and a minor arterial.
Okay, and so just so I understand the process you guys go through. So major arterial is defined through the code, and right now there's only four. And the process to redefine something like Marshland Road or Squire Pope as a major arterial would go through what kind of process?
It would be a text amendment to the land management ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Hens?
So you signed a development agreement with One Street Residential. That, a development agreement is not a contract. It's just like, okay, we're gonna agree to work together to make this work, right? Because they probably, without this zoning change, they probably wouldn't have gone into the agreement because they couldn't build enough units to make it pencil. Is that kind of how this works?
It is a contract, and in the contract, it states that the town will submit an application to support the use, density, and development standards. So
Okay.
but it is a contract.
So this was part of the agreement that we would try to make this zoning happen?
Yes, sir. The responsibilities of the town versus the responsibilities of the development partner. This is one of the key responsibilities of the town is the entitlement process.
And then second question, we anticipate that this will in perpetuity be workforce housing. So why the 65-year lease?
Well, the 65-year lease is just for our development partner. But at the end of that 65-year lease, the town in 65 years could either renew that agreement, enter a new agreement with somebody new, but that's a term of it, and a lot of that was legal advice we received early on during the negotiations.
That allows them to get financing, et cetera.
It does.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's a question too, do you want to lease something for 99 years, 65 years? But that was all part of the vetting process that the North Point Committee was very involved with, as well as town council.
Commissioner, sorry, go ahead.
And then last, it states that a minimum of 50% of the units would be available for 60 to 80% AMI. You could probably say that would be the maximum because you're going to get more rents if it's higher than 60 to 80%. So, I mean, that's,
Great question, because this is an area where the text amendment supports the development agreement, but the development agreement goes a step farther. The development agreement states that all of the units are to serve the island workforce. It says you either work or will work on Hilton Head. So they will have to, a future tenant will have to show verification of employment on the island, or at least an offer letter. And then every year they'll have to verify that they're still working on Hilton Head. That's for all of the units. But the development agreement also states that at least 50% of the units have to be under 80% AMI. So that's why we have the 60 to 80, then the 80 up. And through a lot of our financial modeling, no surprise, but the higher we go up on that scale, the lower we can go. So when we started looking at different scenarios where we had the experienced nurse and the experienced firefighter who are at the top of that range, how do we serve them? Well, they fall within the 150%, but then that also gets us down to 60. Does that make sense? What would happen is, say we have somebody at below 80% and they get a raise. That's the goal, right? Then they out-earn their 80 and they're able to move into 120 unit. And then their 80 and under unit becomes immediately available for a new tenant. Well, once they out-earn the 120, then they're up to the 150. Well, we are working on a ground lease right now that'll provide a graceful transition period for somebody who eventually out-earns the community. But I understand from some of these programs, not the Hilton Heads program, but some of these programs, once you qualify, you're in there forever. This is different. This is to serve the island's workforce within those parameters.
so it's our charge then to find housing on the island for those that qualify out of this. And so that's going to be the next challenge for us.
And that, not to get outside the scope too much, but this is worth noting. That's where Missy and I get excited when we start talking about Bryant Road and some other opportunities. But that's the dream. I look at myself and many of my friends. We started our careers on Hilton Head. We rented. We bought our first home. We bought our second home, and so it's not just serving somebody in hospitality, which is very important, but it's also serving the future leaders of Hilton Head. It's the entry level planners have a place to live so they can advance in their career. But yes, sir, it's a multifaceted approach.
Any other questions? Commissioner Cordes?
So this North Point development is awesome. From my perspective as an architect, it's a Class A development. Really, really exciting. My question is really, we're still probably 250 units short of where we need to be for workforce housing by the town's own assessment, that 400 is this target. Are you, and this is conjecture, but are you fairly confident that this amendment is not going to prevent other P3 developers? Is there anything in here we need to consider to make it easier for the next 150 or 100 units to come online in the next 5 years? I want to keep the ball rolling. I don't want to make this a one stop, let's get North Point done, right? We need more. And I just want to make sure that this amendment that we're doing doesn't preclude us from doing this again and again and again as we need to.
I would say it does the opposite of precluding. It incentivizes. Part of it is the town went out with this request for qualifications. The committee narrowed that down to 7 qualified proposals, thoroughly vetted those 7 firms, interviewed each one, asked a bunch of questions, and then ultimately town council entered into a development agreement with our preferred development partner. Well, that development agreement stated that the town would entitle the property. Well, I know early on, just through that interview process, Some of the development partners get a little nervous. Well, it's zone park now. Yeah, but we're going to entitle it. What's the density? Well, we don't know. Why don't you know? Because we're going to calibrate the site. We're going to figure out what will fit on there while maintaining neighborhood scale. But our partner has done everything that they've promised, and the town has done everything that we've agreed to as well. So if anything, I would say this will incentivize other types of partnerships, but there's nothing in that agreement. It's a thick agreement that would preclude future public-private partnerships. None.
I don't see any others. Okay, let me start this way with the public comment. Hannah, did we get anybody to enter something on this topic through the portal?
Not through the portal, but Mr. James, if this applies.
Are you sure that this is what he wants to talk about? I think he,
Can you please open the public hearing?
I'm sorry, yeah, the public hearing is open, I'm sorry, yes.
I commend you guys. I did that job for 2.5 years when I first got here. Your job, and I know it sucks. I've got some problems with that area, with the pickleball, okay? We've got a stop sign there that was knocked down about 4 or 5 times since I've been here, since this whole thing started, and it bothers me. In addition to that, on my way here this evening, somebody was parked next to my mailbox. I couldn't get there, okay? Then another guy parked right in front of me, just sitting there on his phone. Okay. And I'm wondering, you know, what's gonna happen when this fad fades away? Okay? We put a lot of money in that tennis court originally, and we got it done, okay? The other thing I wanna say is that the balls, I live real close to that pickleball court, okay? And they promised that the balls they would use would not be the standard that makes that top sign, okay?
Sir, I believe you're talking about a topic we're going to consider later. Is this the old Schoolhouse Park proposed restroom?
Yes.
Okay, we're not quite there yet. I'm sorry, we called you up a little bit sooner than we should have. Sorry, Hannah, was there anybody else who wanted to?
We're not talking about the restroom?
We're not right now.
Okay,
But you'll have a turn in just a minute, sir.
all right.
Thank you. Hannah, nobody else had signed up, so then I will just take one at a time from the audience. If you come forward, sir, state your name and where you live and recognize that your time is limited to 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. My name is Gene Zupfel, and I live at 28 Golden Hind Drive in Hilton Head Plantation.
Yes.
I want to say thank you for this opportunity. Love the openness and the engagement, so it's awesome. Sir, outstanding presentation. Thank you, it was great. My questions, I know I may not get the answer to my questions, but I at least ask you to consider these questions. And I have 3. One, this property is very close to 278, and I heard no mention of any barrier or fencing or protection for what I presume will be a family-heavy development, very close to 278, which is very fast. So I didn't see it. It could have been presented before. If it was, I apologize. I would ask the question. The second question is about traffic. We all know turning left onto Gumtree or anything in rush hour is horrid. I'm curious if some kind of a traffic study was done. At least 300 cars, I presume, is what the parking is made for. I know most of these people will be, or many of these people will be employed on the island, so their route may be different, but probably one person in that domicile could be off island. So I don't know if there was a traffic study conducted, and I would suggest that at least look at that if it hasn't. And then lastly, if you look at entering into North Point, there is a ramp that is not on the main 3 lanes, or 2 lanes, whatever it is. There's a ramp to get on. But when you go west, there is no ramp. There is no way to get onto 278. You're from stop dead. If there could be installed some kind of a ramp to give people an opportunity to come up to speed, we all know that speed is about 55 miles per hour there, even though it shouldn't be. Again, if this was addressed before, I apologize, but it's not on the picture. And I think it's something that I really appreciate when those ramps are in place. Okay?
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment on the topic of the rezoning issue? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. What is your pleasure?
I have a follow-up question. Could you do the land plan, put it back up here, so, because I remembered I wanted to see the ingress and egress. Pretty.
I'll go right to the site plan, or actually we have a connectivity plan that might help.
So it goes in and out right past the post office. And that's one place, and then the second place is that secondary road that goes right in front of the post office. So two ways in and out.
And I'll show you, if I flip here, the westernmost existing curb cut is anticipated to be restricted just for emergency vehicles. And we'll be back within 90 days for a full site development plan review. But the primary access is the eastern in and out. And I can answer some of the gentleman's questions as well, but I want to make sure that I'm answering your questions
And then the
first.
secondary is going in front of the post office there.
That's correct. And our town engineer, Jeff Netzinger, he and his team are studying the traffic impact from this site development plan. The LMO has different levels that trigger a traffic impact analysis. Although this development doesn't trigger that, we are doing one in-house because it's the right thing to do. And it'll also offer some possible mitigation. But having spent a lot of time in the area, right in, right out, the primary goal of this access is the safe connectivity to the school campus. Say you were leaving the school, you could come down Wilbourn, William Hilton Parkway, right in if you're headed to the south end of the island, right out, Cross Island, Spanish Wells. So even if this generates, and I'm getting a little bit outside of my expertise, but traffic engineers tell me that this could generate ballpark 70 trips per hour during the most peak period. That's not all coming in and out of one entryway. And I can tell you from really having observed other apartment communities over the last 2-3 years since I've been involved with this, and having lived close to the Marshland Road apartments, I've never seen them stack on Hilton Head. It's not a super peak in traffic. When you come in and out, it's more spread out. And I'm sure the experts can explain why better than I can, but it's not everybody coming and going at the same time.
Well, what we're hoping is in the morning, most people are taking that southern route to get to work.
And folks are working at different times, and we're creating a lot of pedestrian-friendly infrastructure on the site, bike-friendly infrastructure, pedestrian-friendly infrastructure. We're going to have a trolley stop right on the property. And the question about noise is something that we've talked a lot about. One Street having done a lot of development in the Atlanta metro area, noise is nothing new to them, and that's something that we've talked about since we first visited the property. But we also wanted to have as much separation as possible from the edge of the pavement into the site. So you can see we have over 100 feet throughout. We also have a lot of existing trees and vegetation on the property. We're not envisioning a wall. We can do some berming, but the goal is to have a light footprint with nature. It's not to put up a sound wall. And even if we're doing berming, it would have to be done in such a way that it did not negatively impact any of the beautiful trees on the property. Because there really are some spectacular trees along the buffer. As you get into the site, there are a lot more pines, but it's because it was already developed several years ago. Does that answer your question?
So Ben, if we are to advance our recommendation to the zoning enabling, and then town council agrees with that, you would be coming back within 90 days with a more specific site plan that has some of these features mentioned today that would help us understand?
We will. And the reason I wanted to bring it's sort of premature to bring a site plan, but there's no way for us to tell the story without sharing the site plan, and we're super proud of the site plan. And like I mentioned with the architecture, the reason we're not sharing the architecture today is because we don't want to get in front of the design review.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Whaley.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. It is an exciting layout. I mean, you guys blew it out of the park. And again, this may be an education question for me or the general public. So why RM12 not PD safe, for example? What's the advantage of RM12 over, because this is fairly, you got a lot of amenities, you're gonna have, open space and parks and things like that, so. Why, I don't understand that process. I'm sure a lot of people would help people understand how you got to RM12.
We looked at a bunch of different scenarios. You mentioned the plan development scenario. If it were a plan development 2 as an overlay on top of another zoning district, what we were trying to do is keep this as simple and straightforward as possible and designate it to an existing zoning district that could accommodate this development. And what we found was the RM12 was the closest match with the addition of the bonus density and calibrating the site development standards. But that's why it was selected. It's the closest match. It's very compatible and harmonious with the other adjacent uses, the RM4 to the north, which could yield as many as 12 units, the post office property. But then we even looked at WMU at one point, and which didn't make sense. It's a waterfront mixed-use district, but we've always said before we knew what the right zoning district was, we always said it has to be neighborhood scale. Well, what's neighborhood scale? Maximum 3 stories. What does RM12 allow? Maximum 3 stories. But we also didn't want to have a site development plan that was all 3 stories that looked monolithic. This has a variety of different building types where it goes up in scale, where it goes from that single to 3 stories. And that's why we needed to calibrate the maximum impervious surface coverage to accommodate that variety of housing types.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions or discussion? Are we ready to somebody to make a motion here? Commissioner Cordes?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that the planning commission forward to town council an approval of the text amendments as presented.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Dubois. Now, the commission discussion. You ready for the vote? All in favor of forwarding our recommendation for approval to town council, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have consideration of an ordinance to amend the official zoning map with respect to 16 parcels located on North Point Circle, as you can see there. Missy, do I need to open a public hearing on this?
Yes.
Then let's consider the public hearing opened, and could you give your report, please?
So now I'm before you to discuss the zoning map amendment portion of the entitlement process. It is a request by the town of Hilton Head to rezone 16 parcels on North Point Circle Drive. We had already shared the location map. Again, we've outlined where the property is located for this rezoning request, adjacent to Jarvis Creek, Marsh Point apartment homes, the post office, and located on William Hilton Parkway. This particular development was identified in the Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan, which was established in 1984. The North Point property was identified as Tract M for future development, and you can see parcel M in the Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan in the bottom corner with the north arrow. It is blown up here. In the late 1980s, this area transitioned into a commercial subdivision and was subsequently acquired by the South Carolina Department of Transportation in the 90s to construct the Cross Island Parkway. Between 1997 and 99, the town purchased the property and included various infrastructure improvements to the state-owned right-of-ways as part of the agreement. The site is located in the Squire Pope Historic Neighborhood. It is a historic Gullah neighborhood. It is also within the town's corridor overlay district. Currently, this is a rezoning that would change this from Parks and Recreation to the RM12 district. There are some added allowable uses and then some uses that would no longer be allowed from going from Parks and Rec to RM12. So the allowable uses add residential uses such as family compound, family subdivision, group living, multifamily, recreational vehicle, single family, and workforce housing, which is subject to the amendment that you just recommended. And the uses that would no longer be allowed are cemeteries, open air sales, boat ramps, docking facilities, and marinas. Again, this shows the parcel location and the adjacent zoning of this particular request. The green area are the Parks and Recreation Zone properties. The yellow here is RM4, that's the Marsh Point Apartments. We also have a Broad Creek Public Service District major utility, which is also zoned Parks and Recreation here. And eastbound is the United States Postal Service, which is a government use, and it is zoned light commercial or LC. So those are this particular site and the adjacent zoning. As this is a zoning map amendment, there are requirements. The grounds for the amendment have been met. There was an application that's included within the materials of which the town of Hilton Head as the applicant has described how it meets the required review criteria. And again, what is requested is rezoning of these 16 parcels to RM12. There are 9 required criteria that have to be evaluated when we're considering a zoning map amendment. There are many slides that go through each of the required criteria, so bear with me as I go through them. On criteria number 1 alone, there are 14 slides. So criteria number 1 states whether and to the extent to which the proposed zoning is in accordance with the comprehensive plan. There are many references to the comprehensive plan, and I will try to be brief, but I want to make sure that I cover for the record, as this is the public hearing, all of the compatibility in these findings. We have found that the application addresses the comprehensive plan in the following areas: core value, relentless pursuit of excellence. And the goal and the ideals of excellence is to adopt and pursue our ideals of excellence for Hilton Head Island through several strategies and tactics, continue to provide an appropriate range of uses that accommodate the needs of the community, encourage development and redevelopment opportunities that help Hilton Head Island be competitive and affordable place to live and work. Core value, revitalizing and modernizing the economy. Goal 3, under brand, to manage evolving economic growth while maintaining Hilton Head Island's unique aesthetic. Several strategies and tactics include monitor demographics and economic trends to manage emerging growth changes, monitor trends in housing development and provide housing options that meet market demands. Goal number 6 pertains to workforce, to have a high quality workforce housing through effective incentives. Strategies and tactics include encourage the development of workforce housing through effective incentives, continue to pursue the recommendations from the town's workforce housing strategic plan, identify methods to support construction of new workforce housing by 2024, consider the use of town-owned properties where appropriate for future development projects for land swaps for workforce housing, review the land acquisition program to determine if a workforce housing component would be an appropriate modification going forward, monitor changing demographics and trends in housing development to allow for workforce housing options to meet market demands, continue to educate the public on the potential impact on their daily quality of life that's directly affected by the supply or lack of workforce housing. Core value, fostering an inclusive, multidimensional community. Goal 3, related to community development, states to foster creation of sustainable, inclusive, equitable, and innovative community development on the entire island. Strategies and tactics include continue to implement the recommendations of the town's workforce housing strategic plan, evaluate opportunities for diversity in housing costs and transportation modes by establishing incentives for redevelopment of abandoned or underutilized spaces, encourage employer-assisted housing programs to entice more employees of various professions, teachers, police officers, firefighters, to live within the town limits, address housing issues by using a systematic approach that integrates economic development, transportation, and land use. Core value, building a connected and collaborative community fabric. Goal 2, related to the built environment, to promote designs for the built environment that capitalize on our natural beauty and community strengths, reinforcing our unique sense of place. Strategies and tactics include creating incentives and/or public-private partnerships for redevelopment with goals of diversity in housing types and costs and types of transportation modes. Goal 4, quality of life, to foster an exceptional quality of life for residents, outstanding experiences for visitors, and economic opportunity for our workforce. Strategies and tactics include continue to implement the town's workforce housing strategic plan. Core value, expanding to embrace an integrated regional focus. Goal 2, related to workforce, to improve and expand opportunities for workforce development and housing on Hilton Head Island and in the region. To pursue a regional cooperation of public, private, and nonprofit agencies in meeting area housing and workforce needs. Core value, innovative approach to create right-sized infrastructure. Goal number 6, to promote housing options to meet the needs of all current and future populations on the island. Strategies and tactics include, again, adopting policies to support the town's workforce housing strategic plan, continually assess development standards and building codes to ensure they encourage the development and redevelopment of needed housing, evaluate and study regulations to require and provide options for interconnection between developments, which promotes establishment of neighborhoods and provides safe and convenient access to neighborhood level public facilities, particularly schools and parks. Evaluate proposed changes to residential density to ensure they are appropriate for the character of the area and the neighboring properties. And finally, the conclusions for criteria number 1. It was concluded that the proposed rezoning, along with the amendment to allow workforce housing in ARM 12, is in accordance with the comprehensive plan. The proposed rezoning will modify the existing permitted land use to promote housing options and meet the needs of current and future populations on the island and is consistent with the core value, innovative approach to create right-sized infrastructure. And also, the proposed rezoning and LMO amendment will expand opportunities for workforce development and housing on Hilton Head Island and in the region by adding workforce housing as an allowable principal use consistent with core value, expanding to embrace an integrated regional focus. Criteria number 2 states whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning would allow a range of uses that are compatible with the uses allowed on other property in the immediate vicinity. The findings include that the property is, it's proposed to be rezoned from Parks and Rec to RM12 to allow workforce housing. We've stated adjacent to North Point is Marsh Point Apartments, which is zoned RM4 and has 140 dwelling units on the property. Both the RM4 and the RM12 district have the same residential uses. Those include family compound, family subdivision, group living, multifamily, recreational vehicle, and single family. The range of allowable uses and densities for multifamily in RM4 and RM12 are similar in nature. The proposed zoning has similar densities for workforce housing. RM4 allows workforce housing consistent with the proposed amendment to RM12. However, RM4 allows workforce housing residential density bonus of up to 12 units per acre under certain circumstances, and RM12 allows up to 12 units per acre, and the proposed workforce housing text amendment that we just considered would allow a residential density bonus of up to 25% under certain circumstances, resulting in up to 15 units per acre. Although the North Point density under the rezoning and LMO would allow a greater density than the neighboring Marsh Point, the site has direct frontage along William Hilton Parkway and significantly less water frontage along Jarvis Creek, making it more suitable for increased density from a land use and compatibility and environmental standpoint. The United States Post Office is adjacent to the site, is in the LC zoning district, which allows workforce housing by commercial conversion and is permitted with conditions. So in conclusion, Criteria 2 will allow uses that are compatible with existing neighboring uses allowed on other property in the immediate vicinity. The proposed zoning will add the following land uses that we've described: family compound, family subdivision, group living, multifamily, recreational vehicle, single family, and workforce housing. Criteria 3 is whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning is appropriate for the land. The findings include that the property was once part of the Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan and identified for future development on Hilton Head Island. It was previously subdivided and developed with supportive infrastructure and North Point Circle Road. Utilities have been installed on the site. The site has direct access to William Hilton Parkway. The North Point tract is located on William Hilton Parkway near Gumtree Road. It's close to jobs, schools, community services, and public facilities. Nearby are the hospital, fire stations, medical offices, Boys and Girls Club, the school campus, Island Recreation Center are located within the vicinity. Again, this application proposes a rezoning from Parks and Recreation to RM12 to allow for workforce housing. As proposed in the text amendment, a density bonus of up to 25% is permitted in RM12 if at least 50% of units within the development are workforce housing. And it's concluded that the proposed zoning is appropriate for the land in accordance with the code. The allowable uses, an increase of density to RM12 and associated amendments are appropriate based on compatible and nearby land uses, availability of utilities, infrastructure, and historic planning for the area. Criteria number 4, whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning addresses a demonstrated community need. In the staff report, we found that the Workforce Housing Strategic Action Plan suggests the island should set a goal to facilitate constructing 200 new housing units annually for 10 years. The comprehensive plan suggests the town attracts and maintains a diverse and multidimensional residential population, providing a competitive live-work option. Comprehensive plan also suggests the town continually adapt the core values and comprehensive plan to meet the needs of the present and the future. The application is integral to the North Point Workforce Housing and Development Agreement, which is dedicated to advancing the workforce housing framework on Hilton Head Island. And the proposed rezoning will expand opportunities for workforce development and housing on the island and in the region by adding workforce housing as an allowable principal use consistent with core value, expanding to embrace an integrated regional focus. The application proposes North Point will provide housing, as Ben explained. The project will target households earning between 60 and 150% of the area median income, with at least 50% of the units reserved for households earning between 60 and 80% of the area median income. And it will ensure long-term affordability through covenants, guaranteeing the units remain accessible to the island's workforce in perpetuity. The rezoning would provide appropriate modifications to the zoning designations, land use regulations to meet our community needs while maintaining island character as identified in our plan. And we've concluded the rezoning would fulfill a demonstrated community need. The proposed rezoning would allow workforce housing and ensure long-term affordability through covenants, guaranteeing that units remain accessible to the island's workforce in perpetuity. Criteria 5 states whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning is consistent with the overall zoning program as expressed in future plans for the town. The findings include that this application is again integral to the North Point Workforce Housing Development Agreement, which is dedicated to advancing the town's workforce housing framework. The purpose of the RM12 district is quoted here: to allow higher density residential uses in locations that are served by adequate infrastructure while maintaining the character of these areas and neighborhoods at densities up to 12 units per acre. The Parks and Rec District does not allow residential uses such as workforce housing, and as part of the town's priority effort to prepare and adopt the Skull Creek District Plan, the draft study area aspiration statements support economic development and workforce development, including a variety of housing types, workforce housing, and island employers and employees. This area has been identified for multifamily residential use as part of the future land use considerations within that draft plan. The conclusions state that the proposed zoning is consistent with the overall zoning program as expressed in the draft Skull Creek District Plan and the current comprehensive plan. The application is integral to the North Point Workforce Housing Development Agreement, and the Parks and Recreation District does not allow workforce housing, and the RM12 district rezoning and associated text amendments would allow the town to achieve its stated objectives. Criteria number 6 is whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning would avoid creating an inappropriate, isolated zoning district unrelated to adjacent and surrounding zoning districts. This application would rezone 16 parcels totaling 11.337 acres. The subject property is adjacent to 3 different districts, RM4, light commercial, and PR. Adjacent to the North Point property is North Point Apartments, which is zoned RM4 and has approximately 140 multifamily dwelling units on the property. The range of allowable uses and densities for RM4 and RM12 districts are similar in nature. The proposed zoning has similar densities for workforce housing. Workforce housing is permitted in the adjacent RM4 and LC districts. The proposed zoning change would allow for workforce housing on this particular tract, and the property was once part of Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan, identified for future development on Hilton Head. The conclusion states the proposed zoning would avoid creating an inappropriately isolated zoning district unrelated to adjacent and surrounding zoning districts. Criteria number 7, whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning would allow the subject property to be put to a reasonably viable economic use. The findings include, again, the request is a rezoning from Parks and Rec to RM12 to expand opportunities for use of the property in compliance with the needs and goals within the town's comprehensive plan. What's proposed is a high-quality, energy-efficient rental unit project that targets essential workforce members. Developing workforce housing on the site addresses our community demand for workforce housing by introducing quality rental options that are designed specifically for those in the workforce. And the application aims to help relieve the housing strain, allowing for more individuals to settle in the area where they are employed, promoting more stable community. It's concluded the proposed zoning would allow the subject property to be put to a reasonably viable economic use. The rezoning allows the site to be redeveloped with the residential use of workforce housing, making the site more compatible with the uses in the vicinity, and allows the property to be put to a reasonably viable economic use. Criteria number 8 states whether and the extent to which the proposed zoning would result in development that can be served by available, adequate, and suitable public facilities, such as streets, water, sewer, stormwater. Findings include there are roads and utilities and public services that have been established on the site. Per the code, the land management ordinance, major development plan review application would be required to redevelop the property. As part of that application, any required infrastructure improvements, encroachment permits, approvals from outside agencies, such as the Public Service District, Sparklight, Palmetto Electric, and SCDOT would be required prior to approval of that development plan review. The applicant's narrative reads that the proposed zoning change would facilitate the redevelopment of the property for workforce housing through a public-private partnership. The amendment aligns with the town's goals to address the growing demand for workforce housing while utilizing the property's existing infrastructure to create a sustainable and vibrant residential neighborhood. The proposed zoning is concluded that it would result in development that can be and is already served by available public facilities. And finally, criteria number 9 is appropriate due to any changed or changing conditions in the affected area. We found the application is integral to advancing the North Point Workforce Housing Development Agreement. The property was once part of Hilton Head Plantation Master Plan and identified for future development. Adjacent to the North Point property is Marsh Point Apartments, which is zoned RM4 and has 140 dwelling units on the property. In 2014, the property was rezoned to Parks and Rec District, which is intended to accommodate and manage land uses on publicly held land used for active or passive recreation purposes, or publicly owned land preserved in its natural state for public enjoyment. And the creation of workforce housing aligns with the town's core values within the town's comprehensive plan, innovative approach to create right-sized infrastructure. The rezoning would provide appropriate modifications to the zoning designations and land use regulations to meet community needs while maintaining island character. The text amendment allows a density bonus of up to 25% above the base residential density in the RM12 district if at least 50% of the units are developed as workforce housing units. Again, it's a request to rezone the property from Parks and Recreation to RM12 to allow workforce housing. Many units on Hilton Head Island formerly available to the workforce have been converted to short-term rentals in recent years. There are shifts in employment and housing to the mainland that have impacted the ability to attract the workforce and provide housing that meets workforce housing needs on the island. And the availability of affordable, attainable workforce housing is limited. And changing housing market conditions continue to increase the challenge of ensuring availability of housing for the town's workforce. It's concluded that the proposed rezoning is appropriate due to the changes in the area, including housing market challenges and housing supply. The proposed rezoning will allow for workforce housing with the bonus density on the property next to an apartment complex and is in close proximity to schools, community services, and public amenities. It is recommended again that staff recommends the Planning Commission find this application to be consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and does serve to carry out the purposes of the land management ordinance based on all of those findings and facts and conclusions that were outlined today and is also included in the staff report. We are recommending approval on this application.
Thank you for your very thorough analysis, Missy. I'll ask, before we turn it open to public comment, I'll see if there are any commission questions at this time. Seeing none, let me see if there's anybody wanting to speak with us on this. Anybody any citizen would like to speak with us on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the dais.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Hens moves to approve, supported by Vice Chair Campbell. Discussion or other questions? We're ready for the vote. All in favor of recommending approval to Town Council, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, we are now at the public hearing for consideration of an ordinance to amend Title 16 of the Land to amend Chapter 16-5 Development Design Standards, and that we are also going to be hearing from Missy. So I hope you brought some lozenges along. Your throat is about to give out, I'm sure.
All right. Okay, next up is a public hearing to review and consider an amendment to the land management ordinance to create construction management standards. Town staff is recommending approval of this proposed text amendment. I won't go through the background of the LMO amendment process as we've already covered that. However, I will reiterate that in September, Town Council held a workshop where we discussed all of the priority amendments under consideration, and specifically to construction management standards. We discussed requiring a refuse disposal plan, construction vehicle parking plan, site management plan, access management plan, and require secure construction sites during named storm events. This amendment that's proposed sets out to do just that. It's acknowledged that construction projects do have impacts that extend beyond the immediate site that affects commercial and residential areas. There are disruptions such as noise, vibrations, dust, traffic congestion, parking challenges, and they can disrupt our daily routines and operations. At the same time, we acknowledge that construction projects have positive benefits. They include job creation, economic stimulation, and improvements to infrastructure and public spaces that do enhance our community. These amendments were created to balance the positive outcomes with the need to manage the disruptions. It should be noted too that this does reference weather conditions during which sites must be secured. And for the purposes of this ordinance, tropical cyclones include tropical depressions, storms, and hurricanes. There is, like we do for all the amendments, it includes a table that outlines the issue and how the proposed amendment addresses that. This amendment set is put together, really construction management standards in 6 sections. It covers noise, stormwater, refuse and site cleanliness, traffic and parking, site management, and enforcement. The first item is noise and hours of operation, and that mirrors the amendment that was done to the noise ordinance, and is mentioning that construction management standards has to also meet our current noise ordinance, which was recently amended for construction activity to be Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7, excluding 3 major holidays. Also, the amendment proposes adherence to South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control requirements for stormwater discharge, as well as site cleanliness requirements. So the creation of a refuge disposal plan, as well as a stormwater pollution prevention plan that's required, and a number of items that are related within that plan related to site and loading and unloading, storage of trash and debris are included in those requirements. And then there also is the requirement in section C8 of that particular section where it requires that the site is secured during a named storm. The actual verbiage that's included in the code amendment is here, and it talks about that site and debris or waste, all of the site components have to be secured within 24 hours after there is an issuance of a tropical cyclone watch or warning. There's requirements that were identified. The issue was the construction vehicle parking plan and an access management plan. Those are identified in both the traffic and parking requirements, that there's a construction parking plan that meets certain criteria that are outlined here, and a traffic control plan, and that you're thinking about how you're going to manage oversized construction vehicles when you're doing a construction project. And then that there's a site management plan pertaining to how we address utilities, on-site equipment, tree protection, portable toilets are all mentioned within that particular section. And finally, there's an enforcement section that just states that we enforce all of our ordinances through Chapter 16.8, which is the section that handles enforcement of all of our land management ordinance requirements. Are there any questions? Sorry, I should keep going. This applies to new development for construction and would not create any nonconformities. Again, there are the standard text amendment review criteria that all text amendments have to meet, items A through F. We included in the staff report how those particular review requirements are met with this particular amendment. Our plan, our comprehensive plan, has some ideals for excellence in our planning and processes that aim for town planning and processes to use innovation and learning to continually develop and apply best practices and standards for processes and projects. This amendment does this by helping to approve the way our construction activities are regulated in order to enhance quality of life, safe construction site conditions, and enhance natural resource protections. It addresses present-day conditions for construction management on the island, given that projects are increasingly related to redevelopment and enhancement of existing sites in already developed areas. It responds to concerns voiced about improper construction activities. It ensures that development and construction practices are consistent with the intent of the land management ordinance and the objective to protect public health, safety, and welfare, encourages well-managed construction practices and orderly management and disposal of trash, site clearing, and construction or demolition refuse or debris or waste material, and ensures safe and environmentally sensitive construction practices, safe and efficient constructive traffic parking and circulation, and higher standards for sanitation, tree protection, and overall impact mitigation. It is staff's recommendation that you consider this amendment and that you recommend approval. Are there any questions?
I will remind everybody that we are in a public hearing period right now, but let's find out if there are any questions of Missy from the commission first. Commissioner Hens.
Just have curiosity on the enforcement, and those are code enforcement officials that we have at the town?
Yes, we have a code enforcement team. We also do code enforcement through the planning department as well.
Through
the planning department.
Other questions? Commissioner Whaley?
Yes. On the site cleanliness, are you just talking about refuse, or would it cover, in-process piles of lumber and concrete in terms of site cleanliness? Because it seems to me, and I may be reading it wrong, that it focuses on stuff that's going to be trashed, not sort of stuff sitting around.
It handles, it's a pretty exhaustive list. So it's trash, it's demolition, waste material, and then it needs to have other documentation showing the amounts of trash, waste material to be disposed of. And then there's trash related to site clearing and construction or demolition debris, There's also site clearing debris and refuge. It identifies loading and unloading locations, storage of trash, and then also additional trash, site clearing, construction, demolition, refuse or debris, and waste material needs to be hauled away and disposed of in accordance with requirements. It covers mud, dirt, and debris. What kind of, I think, site debris are you thinking is maybe not covered in all of this?
No, I think maybe I asked the question, I was in an artful way to ask the question. During construction, you'll have stacks of lumber or bags of concrete, and those are not necessarily refuse at that point. Maybe it's not a problem in town. Are those generally kept orderly on the construction sites? It's still in-process materials. It's not considered debris or waste. Has that been a problem or nothing that has been addressed?
It includes the requirement that you maintain all of your site debris. That includes your materials.
Other questions? Okay, then let me open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here who would like to speak with us on this particular topic concerning construction standards? Anybody? Okay, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the dais. Do we need more information? We had all this information well in advance, and now we just heard Missy's review. Are we ready to act?
Make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Whaley makes a motion to recommend approval to town council. Was it seconded by Commissioner Dubois? Any discussion? All in favor then, let's raise our right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Now we are going to hear about the consideration of the capital improvement program for fiscal year 2026 and the priority projects to recommend to town council. And Jeff, are you going to do that for us? Oh, Mr. Colvin?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission members, forgive me, I was sitting there too long, sort of stiffen up. I just want to provide a little bit of framework at the beginning. Per the state planning enabling legislation, defines the powers and duties of the Planning Commission. One of the requirements of the Planning Commission is to recommend a list of priority projects based on previously drafted or approved plans that the town has on file, to recommend to the governing body, which is town council, projects for consideration in their budget development for the next fiscal year. We have a program that is beyond 1 year, and our CIP team, led by Sean Moniger, Jeff Netzinger, and Richard Loudon in the crowd, have done a good job of really turning it into a meaningful 5-year program. But because we only have fiscal responsibility for 1 year, from a budgeting standpoint, it's important to make sure that the priority recommendations from the Planning Commission are received by council, so that they can apply your priorities for consideration as the budgeting process continues. And budget is typically adopted in June of each year. Our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30. So I just want to provide that context to the commission before Jeff gets into specifics to projects and that sort of thing. So, any questions for me before I sit down?
Not for me. Just for reference to the rest of the commission, when we've reviewed these lists in the past, consider the ones that are shown for fiscal year 25 that are either in progress or have been completed. And then the fiscal year 26 ones are the ones that staff are due to be done in fiscal year 26, which starts July 1 of this year. And then the ones that are shown from 26 through 30, or 27 through 30, they're for our reference. They let us know that they're on a list and they're going to take place at some point, in case anyone wanted to know. So if you were worried about the voluminous list of projects there, we're going to focus on only the ones that are currently going and planned for fiscal year 26. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I promised that Jeff and his team
do not have 9 criteria to go through for each of the projects, so we can move through this as quickly as you'd like. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Jeff Netzinger, the Director of Engineering and Projects. Happy to be here today to run through this list with you. And thanks, Sean, for that introduction. So there's a lot of projects on this list that many of them are not identified as priorities this year, but just giving you a sense of all the things we have in front of us. Again, your direction is spot on. We are identifying staff priorities. Most everything we have that's a 25 project underway is identified as a carry forward and a priority to finish up. So I'm not gonna walk through and talk about every project on this list because in total there's more than 100. So I'll hit the ones that are of interest. If you have any questions, you wanna stop me during or after, just let me know. So the big one under the beach program, or the big two, are the beach renourishment that I think you all have heard about. So that, if we were to prioritize our priorities, that's gonna be a number one. We bid the project, put it out for bid yesterday, so we are moving on that. Islanders Beach Park, we had ready to go last year. It got a little bit too late in the season for us to implement and execute before peak season this year, and with the upcoming beach renourishment project, we are pausing that until after the beach renourishment is well underway, because they use Islanders Beach Park as a major, the most important location of access for the folks that are getting on the beach to renourish. They bring in equipment and pipe that way. So we didn't want to disrupt everything. We were just getting ready to build and track all over it. So waiting until we've implemented the beach project is a good time to go with that. So moving on to pathways, we are trying to target successfully implementing some things this year, recommending moving forward with the Jonesville Road pathway, which is a high priority for us, already underway in design, and then making some improvements to the Dunnigan's Alley corridor with enhancing and improving that pathway, converting sidewalks to pathways. So the signal system maintenance, we have a lot of aging infrastructure on the islands. We're continuing to try and upgrade that, get that up to snuff. There's a lot of older signal heads, cabinets, adding installation of resiliency components by adding battery backups at every signal. So we'd like to get that accomplished next year. Under our dirt road paving program, we have several projects that are active in design, trying to get these things acquired and paved so we can take care of them. So the 5 projects still underway are the Mitchellville Road, Alice Perry, Freddie's Way, Alfred Lane, and Benjamin Drive. You can see we have some more teed up on the list for future years. The Jonesville Roads and Spanish Wells Road right-hand turn lane, we are implementing that in conjunction with the pathway project, because that's going to be part of the pathway design. So we will execute that project when it's ready to deliver as part of the pathway, also adding a right turn egress onto Spanish Wells Road from Jonesville Road. Pope Avenue streetscape improvements, we are taking forward some of the recommendations that have been made by our consultant as part of the major thoroughfares plan, and implementing some of that stuff along Pope Avenue. You know, it lists landscaping improvements, signage and lighting improvements, but also consideration of widening those pathways. Many places they're not wide enough to support the traffic that's on them. Again, we have broken down the William Hilton Parkway corridor into 8 segments, and we're focusing right now on two focus areas for next year, and this beginning the design for improvements along segment, what we call segment 5 between Matthews Drive and Shelter Cove Lane. We're looking at in-corridor improvements there that could improve safety for sure, landscaping, signage, and upgrade the character of that corridor. Maybe add a raised median with some plantings in it, and control access and improve the whole aesthetic of the corridor as well. Segment 8, although Segment 8 is more than just Sea Pine Circle is something that we are really anxious to improve. It's been a problem for a long time, and we're focusing an awful lot of efforts to make that thing more functional. So we're spending a lot of effort there. And then we have some ongoing and increasing stress in the Folly Field area with roadways. So we're looking at implementing safety improvements in that area. That might be combinations of traffic calming measures, improvements to our crosswalks, increasing visibility, and doing what we can to slow traffic down in that congested area. As you probably aware, Island Rec is one of the agencies that submits an annual list of budget items. I'm not going to go through in detail. I don't want to skip anything on this busy sheet right here. So the Caligny Circle Pocket Park up there, that's in final design and permitting right now. We do want to implement that project next year. It's just about ready to go. So once the peak season is done, we'll implement that project. That's our plan. Crossings Park, we're trying to advance as quickly as we can on 2 of the now 3 phases we've broken Crossings Park out into. Priority number one is to get some pickleball constructed on Narrow Road. So that's phase 1. We're also moving forward with phase 2, which is renovations to the Bristol Sports Arena and the skate park, and then adding a pump track. And then future, that should say baseball complex, not baseball and soccer, but for phase 3. The Mid-Island Tract phase 1, we're continuing to work with our consultants on schematic design for improvements there to set the table for the rest of the amenities the master plan calls for, and that's massive improvements to the drainage system, kind of connecting some of those lagoons together, improving the flow of water through the tract, and focusing on improving water quality, because all the storm water that gets into that island from the central part of the island goes out into the Fishaw Creek, and this is a good opportunity to treat that water and improve water quality. So that's a big component of that, creating some wetlands as well, and then teeing up the landscaping, making it less golf course-like and a little bit more park-like. Patterson and Taylor, Patterson Family Park and Taylor Family Park are both under design as a kind of a design build project. We expect those projects to be ready to construct at the beginning of calendar year 2026 to the middle of 2026. And moving forward with design on improvements at Old Schoolhouse Park, including some new bathrooms and new ADA compliant pathways and some parking lot improvements. So 1 or 2 things stand out here. I can't speak in great depth about IT equipment and stuff like that, but I can talk about the improvements we're planning to make on the recently acquired 4 Office Way facility. We do some renovations there. We'd like to get that done by the end of this calendar year to early next year. Move some of our staff in there because we have some staffing constraints. So. Mitchellville Freedom Park improvements. You know, we have a role in improving parts of Mitchellville Freedom Park. We've tasked ourselves with adding better circulation and parking facilities and some drainage infrastructure, and we're moving that forward right now through a kind of a tedious permitting process due to archaeological and historic impacts, in addition to getting the permit from the state for water quality. Stormwater programs, we have an awful lot of things that we're moving forward in the stormwater program. Little projects, medium-sized projects, and big projects. Some of them taking a lot longer to get implemented than we would have anticipated because, again, permitting issues, Moonshell Road, that's the Folly Field area where we're trying to improve stormwater there. We've been waiting 15 months to get a response on the Corps of Engineers to give us an answer on what's wetlands and what's not wetlands. Some new priorities improvements at Helson's Way, where we experienced some issues with a field test of our system with Debbie last year, and realized that we have a deficiency we need to address at that location. One of the big ones is the overhaul of our major pump station there that sits between Wexford and Long Cove that drains the center part of the island. We're continuing the process of a complete overhaul and capacity improvements and more efficiency improvements at the Wexford pump station. It's listed here as debris system design, but it's more than that. It's a complete overhaul of that 22-year-old facility. But keeping our vehicles up to speed is always important, making sure we have enough. That's all I have in my high level. Do y'all have questions?
Let me say, it's my understanding this does not require a public hearing, although I will open it up for public comment after there are questions by the commission. So Vice Chair Campbell, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you go back to, was it Old Schoolhouse Park? Old Schoolhouse Park?
Yes.
Yeah, what are you planning on doing here?
Just want to double check my notes before I tell you.
Improvements, ADA
So it's
parking.
construction of a bathroom facility, and again, I mentioned adding the pathways and connectivity and ADA improvements at the parking lot and at the courts.
Are you gonna do anything about extending the parking lot in? Because there's a lot of people that park there.
Richard, do you have any input on that? It's Richard Loudon is our CIP program manager.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Just as far as the parking goes, we're not going to extend it any, but we are going to add ADA concrete parking walkway along the length of it and tie it to the existing pickleball courts.
Okay.
Yeah, I realize there is a parking issue out there. There's a lot of people park everywhere, but it's really set up for just the parking lot that we have right now.
Okay. Is there anything you can do to help Mr. James out over there too? Because I noticed that there are cars parked in front of that mailbox. His mailbox is every time I go around there.
Yeah, we can look into that. We can definitely
look into that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions of either of these people? Commissioner Hens?
So just, here's the litmus test to see if we got it right. What's your committee's top priority that is not a priority? What's your next top priority, and is that below all of these priorities?
So if I have 60 priorities, and you're asking me what 61 would be?
Yes.
That's a tough question. That is a tough question. A lot of what we're doing here is we have a lot of things we'd like to implement, but we have issues with budget, staff capacity, contractor capacity. We can only do so many things at the same time well. So we're focusing on doing maybe not quite as many things, but doing all of those things well and getting them done on time.
What is the park that's going on in Wild Horse Road? No, you're not, Squire Pope.
What was the question again?
That little pocket park that's going on Squire Pope Road. Are y'all in charge of that?
Are you talking about Green Shell or?
I think it's next to the oak trees.
Do you know which one that is, Sean?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Sean Leininger, Assistant Town Manager.
Yeah.
So the property we're referring to is the Stony Oak property. It's actually not a park.
Okay.
It's just an improvement area, an area of a property that the town owns that we're making some improvements on. There'll be a small trail that comes off of the main multi-use path they'll take you back under those two live oaks that are there, with a little seating area, back in there, and then lighting up onto the live oaks to help accent those in the evening hours.
Is there any parking or anything gonna be there too?
Any,
or-
park or parking? No.
Okay.
No, it's really just kind of a pull-off for those on the multi-use trail, and the neighborhood itself for those that are nearby.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions by the commission? Commissioner Cordes?
I have a question about, so I've been down at Coligny in the last couple of weeks after the parking changes and seen how those lots are in heavy demand. Why is the enchilada thing kicked out for another 2 or 3 years? Why is clearing of that site and the parking that's been promised not in this
I think
fiscal
Sean's
year?
coming back up.
I'll stay up here for a minute. So, good afternoon again. Enchiladas is actually part of this year's budget. We just received bids for the demolition of that building. And then we will make some light improvements to the parking lot to get that into use this season. And then farther out, it's actually a priority in 27, I believe. We'll make some permanent improvements to that area, but we'll get it in service this year, which is after the building's demolished and moving forward.
Okay, so it will be in public use sometime this year?
It will be in public use,
Awesome.
yes.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, let me see, is there anybody here from the public who would like to comment on this particular topic? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. My suggestion would be from past experience, if you look at these, they're right next to the column for status. It's got staff priority, then it's got planning commission priority, then it's got town commission. My suggestion would be that we say that we're in agreement with the staff priorities, except where we're not, and then to point out to where we're not. Otherwise, it's a very laborious task, and we usually end up in the same place anyway, so. Are we okay with that? Okay. So given that, are there any areas that have been suggested that are staff priorities that we wouldn't agree with on this chart? Okay, then is there somebody willing to move something?
I move that we agree with the staff's recommendation of priority items.
Okay, so that would be agreeing with, Commissioner Cordes, are you seconding? Okay, so we are recommending the town council that we agree with the priorities of the staff for the fiscal year 2026. Other questions or comment? Are we ready to vote? All in favor of recommending the town council? I think we're unanimous again. Okay.
Thank you.
Now we're here, now we'll open up another public hearing to go through this public project review for a new restroom facility at the old schoolhouse park. And we will have a staff report about that, and then we will have time for public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. This is Melissa Lito, Principal Planner. Let me open up the attachment. Do it from. You got it, okay. I think so. Okay. So I'm here today to present the public project for your review. This is a proposal to add a small restroom facility with a storage room and a covered porch, paved handicap parking, and a sidewalk to the pickleball courts at Hilton Head Park, Old School Park. And this is the subject property. I'm going to give you a little more details on the proposal. So you enter in through here. There's a gravel parking lot. And the proposed building will closely emulate a similar facility in the town. That's at the Cordillo Tennis Courts facility on Cordillo Parkway. It will look exactly like that type of model. The old schoolhouse park currently has no toilet facilities and is served by a single portable toilet that must be serviced and pumped out on a regular basis. And there are no hand washing facilities. The parking area is currently entirely gravel with no handicap parking spaces, and access to the pickleball courts is across a grassy field. Making handicapped access to the facilities, making it the handicap access facilities challenging. All existing elements on the site will remain largely as is. The open field space, basketball court, and pickleball courts will remain. The gravel parking area will be modified to incorporate a paved handicap parking space, and a concrete sidewalk will be added from the handicap parking space to the existing pickleball, which is they have concrete around the vicinity of the pickleball courts. Let me see if I can provide you with a better site plan. Okay, so here's the entrance. This is the gravel parking lot. At the end of the parking spaces, there will be a concrete, 2 new handicap accessible parking spaces. This is the proposed sidewalk that will provide you with ADA accessibility, that will go to the concrete that's surrounding the pickleball court, and you can have the covered porch with water and bathroom facilities. All existing elements on the site will remain largely as is. Like I mentioned, the new toilet building will directly abut the existing concrete sidewalk of the pickleball courts and what is currently a grassy area, and no existing trees will be impacted. If I can go through this page. If I may speak of the facts and conclusion of law that indicate the proposed project aligns with the town's comprehensive plan. Under Parks and Recreation, Community Theme, Strategies and Tactics, Best in Class, continue to provide high-quality park furnishings and amenities. Continue to evaluate the need to update and or provide opportunities to improve accessible routes and features at park and facilities, and for special events or recreational programming under community theme. Strategies and tactics, accessibility. Parks and Recreation recommendations and action items. Final recommendations for parks existing and proposal. ADA accessible pathways connecting the parking area to park amenities is what being proposed. Under the infrastructure for core values, strategies and tactics, evaluate existing town facilities and identify opportunities for redevelopment or new construction to provide best-in-class facilities across the town government. And this is what we are proposing today for the old school park. Under diversity core values, aims to ensure that local business and other public spaces can accommodate the ease of mobility for citizens with physical disabilities by complying with the ADA. And conclusion of law, the comprehensive plan supports the location of the proposed project. Our plan strategies and tactics for diversity, infrastructure, and parks and recreation aim to ensure the local businesses and other public spaces can accommodate the case of mobility for citizens with physical disabilities by complying with the ADA. The proposed project will add ADA accessible pathway connecting the parking area to park amenities in compliance with the recommendations and action items for Hilton Head Park, Old School House Park for the Park and Recreations. That's location. The second review is under character. The comprehensive plan supports the character of the proposed project. Our plan strategies and tactics for diversity, infrastructure, and parks and recreation aim to improve accessible routes and features at the park and provide high-quality park finishings and amenities, which is included by this proposed project. And then lastly, to the extent of the proposed project and how it supports the comprehensive plan. Our plan strategies and tactics for diversity, infrastructure, and parks and recreation aim to evaluate existing town facilities and identify opportunities for redevelopment or new construction to provide best-in-class facilities that meet or exceed the expectations of its residents and visitors, which is proposed by this project. The LMO official determines this application is compatible with the comprehensive plan for the location, character, and extent as based on the above findings of facts and conclusion of law. As you would, are you aware, Planning Commission determine a motion. The Planning Commission's role is to determine whether the application is compatible or is not compatible with the comprehensive plan for location, character, and extent. And thank you. I also have the applicant here to answer any questions you may have as well.
Okay. Before I open it up for public comment, any questions of Melissa on this proposal? Okay, seeing none, let me find out if this would be your time, Mr. James, now to come forward. Thank you so much for your patience, sir.
Okay, I am Kenneth James, Vietnam veteran that moved back here several years ago after I became sick, okay? I live on 28 Adriana Lane. And I've had so much mess going on since that pickleball opened up. And I've got some guy in December, came out with some buddies of his, I guess. They lit the whole field up and played pickleball at 3:30 in the morning. Okay. The stop sign I mentioned before, it keeps coming down because apparently the people that are actively using the park can't see or have some other ailments. As I mentioned before, on my way here, my mailbox was blocked. As you know, it's normally blocked anyway. And I asked before, what's going to happen when this fad goes away? Huh? Another 8 years? Nobody's going to be playing pickleball. They'll be doing something else. And one of the things that really bothers me more than anything else, okay, is that on the 13th of March, I was outside doing some gardening, and I heard somebody from the pickleball court says, F you to his opponent, okay? And that is the kind of attitude I see out there. They come in, they park anywhere, okay? There's a sign up there that says, no parking on the grass. But what was it, about 3 weeks ago, they had a tournament out there with another 30 cars on the grass, okay? And it's becoming a problem with me, okay? I'm still suffering from PTSD, and I moved here so I could have a comfortable, quiet place to live. And that's not happening. Okay, I spent 2.5 years on the Planning Commission. I know it's 2 years max, but I fulfilled another guy's spot. Okay, and at that time, the things we were looking for and to correct is to improve the environment for everyone. Okay, not just the ones behind the plantation gates. I own a house in Plantation too. Okay, not that I live in, but I rent. Okay, but it's becoming unbearable. I can't rest there. Okay, that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. I think I heard staff saying they were working on addressing some of your concerns, so thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, I'm not sure about that what do you call it, but to me, a latrine or a place on that spot is going to cause more people to come there. And I'm not sure if the Parks and Recs know what they're doing, but the scheduling is unbelievable. Because every time there's a change, there's people on the grass. Because there's nowhere to park.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak with us on that topic? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back up here for discussion. The recommendation is to approve the plan, to send it on. So do we have discussion about, or any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So while this looks technically compliant with everything that has to be done, given what we've heard from I just looked at the map, this gentleman's house is like, probably spit to the pickleball courts. Is there an urgency in this before we spend resources on this to correct the situation he has in terms of livability? In other words, to make that a priority, I mean, before we do whatever has to be done for ADA. Thanks.
Sean Collins, Assistant Town Manager. I didn't see Mr. Leininger back there. I will let him jump in there. So I just want to point out, so the property where the park exists today, used to be tennis courts, basketball court, was owned jointly between the town and the county. It's been a park for many, many years. The town acquired full control of that a few years ago in a land exchange with Beaufort County. And at that time, resurfaced the tennis courts to allow pickleball play there. We've also made improvements to the basketball court since we acquired full ownership of that. And so public project review, we made those improvements, went through the process. There's a provision in the state code, just like asking you to recommend priority list for CIP projects, where for public projects, if you're adding a new facility, if you're building a new park, adding new right-of-way, we bring it to the Planning Commission to make sure that it's compatible with a comprehensive plan for location, character, and extent. So location, character, and extent, it's been a park for many, many years. It's been enjoyed by many different users. It's in a location that has been conducive for park in the past. The extent, other than making it more compliant from an ADA standpoint, parking and adding restrooms, the extent of the project is relatively small. We're not expanding pickleball. We're not expanding other uses out there. And so I think when you look at it from a compatibility, we're just saying it's been a park for a number of years. We'd like to make some additional improvements that go beyond with additional structure, which requires and triggers this public project review when we want your consideration to say that it is consistent, that our public facilities and the consistency of what we deliver from a location, character, and extent are consistent with the comp plan. So I think that's what we're looking for here.
Right.
As far as priority, I think the use of the facility is not going to stop. I don't know what it would become and if pickleball becomes something different, but as tennis started to wane a little bit, pickleball picked up, and now that's again the primary use of this facility in particular. But I think we owe it to our citizens and the folks that use this park to improve the ADA accessibility and to improve with restrooms so that they've got a place there for water and refuge. And I think that would, in my opinion, and then the report from staff, find it consistent with the comprehensive plan for those reasons.
Thank you, and I understand it is our role to determine whether or not it is within the LMO standards, notwithstanding Mr. James's concerns. Yes, sir?
Let me add that the family that lived there before, okay, a white family, left that property to the town and gave it to them for a children's park. Now, the language I hear out there is not conducive to that. Okay? I have never seen a policeman over there. Not one time in the last, 3 or 4 years. I see the guys that work at the Parks and Recs thing cruising around from time to time. But there's nobody that appears to be in control. Okay? And that's my main concern. When you start piling cars and then just, hey, come on. That's what happens. Chaos.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So again, our role is to determine whether or not we're convinced that it meets the standards of the LMO. I'm convinced it does, but I'm concerned as well that Mr. James has some legitimate issues. So Commissioner Cordes?
So the improvement for ADA accessibility as a federal mandate, a federal code with onerous provisions if you don't comply, I don't think there's an option there. I think the town has recognized a need for accessibility on this site, to not do that puts us at danger of non-compliance with the federal law, which has some serious implications. Once you say we need to put accessible parking in there, it needs to happen. I mean, am I wrong?
No, sir, although I think that to an extent, we've got two separate issues here. You've got the need for this, then you have Mr. James's complaints, which I'm not discounting at all. But that's, in my view, that's an enforcement thing that the town needs to take up to, control the behavior that is impacting the neighbors.
Could we do it depending on the condition of his complaints?
Again, I'm pretty sure our role is to determine whether or not it's in compliance with the LMO. I think we hear it loud and clear that there are some issues that need to be addressed as far as Mr. James is concerned, but I'm getting some indication from the back of the room that enforcement is the key there, and that can be a separate issue. So with that in mind, is there anybody willing to move this forward, or move to approve by Commissioner Dubois, seconded by Commissioner Hens? Any other discussion? All those in favor of that, then please raise your hand. Okay, we're fine. Thank you. This would be a time for public comment for items that did not appear on today's agenda. Is there anybody here who would like to speak with us on something that we have not already covered on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, there's no additional commission business or chairs report. We do have a staff report today to look at a development plan review, and I don't know who's going to be giving that to us today. I see the applicant is here, but are we having a staff report on that? Trey? Okay. Thank you.
Shane, what? All right, do we got everything in here?
And
Yes.
just for reference for the commission, this is for our information only. We're not going to be asked to act on this today, just for our information.
Correct. All right. All right. So Trey Lau, Development Services Program Manager for the record. All right, so as town staff continually looks for ways to improve its processes, one recent change implemented by town staff for the Development Review Program is to require all development plan review applications for new commercial development and major subdivision applications to be shared with the Planning Commission. The applications will be presented by staff for information purposes only. This will provide a way for Planning Commission and the general public to be made aware of all new development being proposed on the island. There is one new development plan review application ready to be shared with the Planning Commission today, DPR 001470-2024, and that location is 862 William Hilton Parkway, a development project that proposes to refurbish the facade and modify the rear elevations of the Beach Properties building at 862 William Hilton Parkway. Associated with this building work will be reestablishing sidewalks around the building, access to parking, as well as providing enclosures for storage racks and extensive plantings around the building. Two attachments, we have a site plan and a narrative. So So I'll go through the narrative first. Let's take a look at that. So we'll go through the narrative quickly. I think it's supposed to say this.
Yes.
This project proposes to refurbish facade and modify the rear elevation of the beach properties building at 862 William Hilton Parkway. Associated with the building work will be reestablishing sidewalks around the building, access to parking, as well as providing enclosure for storage racks and extensive plantings around the building. The project involves one parcel, 862 William Hilton Parkway, totaling approximately 1.3 acres, found in the light commercial zoning district. The property contains no wetlands or critical lands and is within X flood zone without a minimum base flood elevation. Primarily accessed on the eastern frontage from an access easement connected to US 278 William Hilton Parkway, a town arterial, and backed by additional access easement driveway to the north. The property is beset by light commercial district properties on the western and eastern boundaries, 20-foot side and rear setbacks, and a 50-foot arterial building setback, along with 50-foot arterial buffer defined by the buildable area and landscape treatments for the perimeter. The work associated with the project is isolated to the interior hardscapes, building and parking islands, leaving the perimeter plantings and buffer intact. The existing 9,000, I think this was to be GPA two-story building will be modified to meet the current needs of the Vacation Property Management Office. The removal of separate building entries will be consolidated into one central covered entryway at the William Hilton Parkway frontage. At the rear of the building, the no longer in use Teller drive-up lane and covered vehicular access will be removed. A new first floor, 900 square foot building addition on the rear will be used for maintenance operations and storage, while the remainder of the modified rear space will be dedicated to open space and plantings. The buildings will expand to approximately 9,900 square feet on a parcel allowed for 13,000 square feet per the LMO. Separate enclosures for both the existing HVAC units and the propane storage racks will be built to complement the building and screen these elements. The proposed hardscapes and landscapes will refresh the space around the building and provide safe access for visitors and employees. The removal of 4 chinquapin oaks due to age and structure will be mitigated with the plantings of 5 live oaks per the LMO mitigation calculations, filling parking lot islands and shading the asphalt paving to remain. The existing foundation evergreen hedge will be expanded and additional planting area established outside the main entry. The rear of the building will provide additional planting area to screen building and foundation. Screening will be provided around the HVAC and propane storage enclosures. All plant material will be native and naturalized material aimed at longevity and maintainability. In closing, the redevelopment of buildings and parcels to a viable economic use for the island and its guests supports the efforts of the town to revitalize aging properties. The work at 862 William Hilton Parkway will support an on-island business whose goal to showcase and welcome visitors and families vacationing on Hilton Head Island. All right, so now take a look at the site plan. Can we get rid of this? It's not really, all right, can you all see this good on your screens up there? Because it's not very, I can't see it very well on here. I don't see any elevations, so it's all 2D work or 2D site plans on the screen up here. I cannot read that. This is probably existing. Yep, these are the existing conditions as they are right now. We got William Hilton Parkway here, and then the remainder of the parcel has the access back here that was talked about in the narrative. Right now, you enter the building from 2 sides. Their proposal is to consolidate that to where you're coming in the front there. I have seen the elevations that went to the DRB. They look nice. I can't believe they didn't add them in here. Here's some of the reconfiguration
I went by it yesterday.
site
just to check it
improvements.
out.
But I will open it up to questions to you all,
Ray,
and
this
I will
is
try to
the,
answer the
this is
best
the
I can.
Hargray building, right?
I believe so. I believe you're correct.
Community churches.
It is being repurposed.
It's a two-story, right?
Yes, sir. It is a two-story. I think it mentions that in the narrative that they're adding additional square footage to only the first floor. 900 square feet, I believe is what I read in there.
Yeah, while we don't have, this is being presented for information purposes, if there's any feedback or comment that people want to make, that we could do that, but.
You saw the elevations. Tell me, are they getting rid of that red billboard in the front of it? Because that would be an improvement just to get rid of that.
I can't remember if they did. This is a completely different use. It's a vacation rental company. I don't think they have any use for that on there.
Are we doing bicycle rentals out of here too or anything, or?
Not that I'm aware of. That was not part of the proposal that I saw.
Yeah, 9,000 square feet.
I think mainly it's being used for office space and just a nice place for visitors to come in when they're checking in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no questions, I think we're good, Trey.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And that's all that's on my agenda, unless anyone has anything else. This makes up for some of those 20-minute meetings we had last year, so we'll stand adjourned.